you everyone for coming. This is awesome. This is a great crowd. Today we're going to talk about some best practices for no-code, low-code development on the Microsoft Power Platform. I never know if it's good to go first or if it's good to go last with this session, because this is not like a live demo. We're not going to dig into specific kind of techniques on the platform. What we're going to talk about are these best practices. So if you walk away from this with nothing else, it's that I hope you take away a couple good ideas, new ideas, things that you haven't tried before, and can use those throughout the rest of the day and when you go back to work on Monday. So a little bit about me. I'm Andrew Welch. I'm the practice manager for business applications and automation at a company called Applied Information Sciences, AIS. I put together the Power Platform adoption framework last year and have been trying to get that out into the world and share it with people, helping big organizations particularly adopt the Power Platform at scale. So find me here, andrew.welch at appliedis.com if you want to get in touch, but also on Twitter, Andrew D. Welch, and Instagram, Andrew D. Welch as well. So like I said, hopefully today what you'll do is you'll walk away from this discussion with just a few ideas that you can share with your colleagues or put to work in your own work. So we're going to just start at number 1, and we're going to go to number 10, and mostly kind of a focus on Power Apps. That's where I come from, but hopefully some useful things for the rest of the platform as well. So let me ask, who here feels like you are a part of or contribute to the community around Power Platform? All right, so they're all kind of sitting over there. All right, so everyone take a look at these guys over here. A lot of them are speaking today, okay? They are awesome people. So I'm not even trying to be ridiculous with this number 1 best practice, but do not be scared. Embrace the community, okay? This is a group of people from around the world, worldwide, that are all doing great things and learning how to build great, useful, beautiful things on this platform, okay? So when I started making this presentation, I actually asked. I went out and I said, hey, what are your best practices? So you see some of them here. Some of these folks are actually sitting in the room. Well, at least one of them is sitting in the room. Chris, where are you? You're sitting in the room. He made it. All right. But these folks, every day, we're coming up with new ideas. We're coming up with new ways of doing business on the platform. It's still very new technology, so it's okay if you don't know everything there is to know about Power Apps or Power BI or Flow, okay? Embrace the community, ask, learn from these people, and then contribute yourself, okay? It's a wonderful family, and they're here to help you. So don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to get involved. There's people from all around the world. We're up 24 hours a day because the world turns, and we continue to work on Power Apps in the middle of the night, right? Embrace the platform too. So who here comes from, you think, a Dynamics background primarily? Okay. Who comes from a SharePoint background primarily? Oh, wow. That's never happened to me before. That's good. That's good. That's good. All right. Who thinks of themselves as a Power BI person? All right. That's awesome. That's great. So let's just take a moment to talk about the platform. Who finds it sort of difficult to explain Power Platform to your colleagues or to your customers? Who feels like that's a challenge that you're struggling with? Okay. Wow, it's mostly like the guys in the back, right? You're speaking and you find it difficult, right? All right. So let's talk about what Power Platform is, and if this seems basic to you, there's a real point to this, and that's that as a community, as professionals, as the experts, and everyone in this room, you are the experts, right? We need to be able to explain Power Platform to people, particularly our colleagues and our customers, in a way that others can understand and appreciate and understand and see why they get value from it. Why is the Common Data Service so magical? Why is Microsoft investing in this platform so much? Why are partners working so hard to be good with the platform? So when I get in front of people and I talk about what is Power Platform, a lot of times people ask me, maybe you've had the same experience, right? Where they say, oh yeah, Power Platform, that's Power Apps, right? That's where any idiot can build an app, right? Like me, like an idiot like me can build an app. And someone from Microsoft actually said, he said, you know, when I present this, I'm going to start telling people, Andrew Welch can build an app. If Andrew Welch can build an app, then anyone can build an app. So I always start, when I explain the platform, I start with the apps, okay? And I say, yeah, these are Power Apps. We've got a Canvas app, we've got a model, and then I say, wait, never mind, we'll just go with Power Apps. I'm not going to try to explain Canvas and model yet. And I say, so we start where the customer is, right? These are Power Apps. And there's really 3 flavors of Power Apps. There's 3 varieties of Power Apps. One of them are those custom apps that you are building for your customers, or you are building within your organization, or citizen developers are building these apps. Those are the apps that you say, well, my organization, my company has a mission. We're going to build an app to satisfy that mission, to satisfy that requirement. So it's what you think of when you're out just building that app for your purposes. The second flavor of Power App are those, I call them mission-focused COTS apps. These are the apps, they're ISV apps. They're apps that folks are out in the world and they say, you know, we have a problem, we have a need, other people have that need. Maybe it's to manage travel, or maybe it's to manage recruiting, or to you know, identify candidates for new jobs, whatever it might be. And we say, this is a common need, and we're going to make it available on AppSource, and anyone out there in the world can go grab that app and deploy it to their environment and use it. And then this is what blows people's mind. The third flavor of Power Apps are the Dynamics 365 apps. And when I tell people this, they sort of look at me, and they don't really know what to make of it, and I say, yeah, by the way, Dynamics really are just a bunch of big Power Apps that Microsoft happens to have built. All right? So longtime Dynamics people kind of freak out when they hear this. They think, wait, Dynamics are Power Apps? Yeah, Dynamics are Power Apps, all right? So as we tell this story to our customers and to our colleagues, we need to start thinking of this as a platform, and we need to start thinking of Dynamics 365 applications as being really big Power Apps that happen to have been built by Microsoft. So when you're trying to deploy this functionality inside of your organizations or inside of your customers' organizations, think of D365 as a catalog. So you can go to the catalog and you can say, oh wow, we have this need for project service automation. We've got this functionality out there. We have like the world's foremost expert in the room on project service automation. Antti, raise your hand, all right? He's the guy. But you can kind of look in that Dynamics catalog and say, wow, we can meet this need straight out of the box with Dynamics. We don't have to develop necessarily a custom Power App. So that's how I think people should be thinking of Dynamics going forward in the future. And of course, we know that all of these apps live on top of the common data service. And that really is, to me, what the magic of Power Platform is, all right? Yeah, we can build these apps, but really it's that all of the data from across all of these apps live inside of common data service. And they can share that data from app to app to app. And then we point Power BI at the common data service as well, all right? So we can extract and surface and gain insight from this information. And you know, when I deploy the platform with customers, a lot of times what happens is that they look at their first chart or they look at their first dashboard or visualization, and their mind is blown by how god-awful their data is, how just terribly wrong all of the data that they have living in common data services. And they sort of yell at me about this. I say, it's your data, not mine. I'm here to help you discover how terrible your data really is. Now let's fix it together, right? So we point Power BI at that, and then we use these 280 out-of-the-box data connectors, 280 plus now, that Microsoft has built for us, all right? Yes, even to Salesforce. We point Power BI at those data connectors as well, so we can mash this data up with our own data that lives inside of Common Data Service, and then we can point those custom data connectors at Power Apps as well. And it's really hard to draw flow on a diagram. Like, how do you draw the glue? But flow is the glue. Flow is what holds the whole platform together and lets us automate on the platform. But this is what Power Platform really looks like, I think, in the simplest terms. And this is how I explain it to my colleagues and my customers. And I think that going through this and showing people this is what the platform looks like and this is why it's important matters. So let's throw all these pieces up in the air and kind of rebuild the platform in a different way. So we start with Common Data Service. That's where our data lives. Now we're going to deploy all these apps to our data. So it's maybe a custom travel app that we built because we have in our organization, we have a need to manage travel reservations. Yeah?
Who's Ray?
I'm going to tell you here, all right? So Maybe we're using D365 for sales. You built a case management application. Dynamics for Talent, our HR department is using Dynamics for Talent. Airframe is a project management app that I built. And then finally, the app that Ray built. You know that guy down the hall? He just built an app. This actually happened to me several years ago. So maybe the thing that I've built in the past that I'm most proud of was this application that manages travel and electronic medical records for the New Zealand and the American scientists down on Antarctica, okay? And we built that in Dynamics. So it's a full-featured electronic medical records app built in Dynamics, and it's deployed at the South Pole. It's awesome. Yes?
How many custom entities do you have?
Oh, shut up. 2,500. So anyway, when we came in to replace that app, we kept hearing about, oh, we need to modernize Ray's List. Ray's List is this very important app that we have. We need to take on Ray's List. Well, it turns out that Ray's List was not an app. Ray's List was a spreadsheet. It had 20,000 lines of travel reservations on it. It had been built by a guy named Ray, and he hadn't even worked there in 5 years. It was just living on a share drive. Used by the travel department down the hall, and they called it Ray's List, and they swore, oh, this is an app, we need to modernize Ray's List. So Ray's List, the app that Ray built, to me, is emblematic of all of those apps, those quasi-apps that are out there within your organizations, the spreadsheets, the SharePoint lists, the Excel spreadsheets, the Access databases. Those are the apps that we're here to help people modernize, right? And then we use these custom data connectors, these out-of-the-box data connectors to point at the apps. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we've just bought I can't imagine why you would be using Salesforce, but we've bought a new company and they're using Salesforce, so we need to point Salesforce at our D365 for sales or whatever it might be. And then we wrap the whole thing inside of Power BI. So we can gain insight, and we can get to the data that we have there, and we can visualize it and help people who haven't thought maybe as deeply about the applications and the technology themselves. We can help them use this information and use this data in a really meaningful way. So my number 2 best practice, really embrace the platform. Don't think of this as a one-off app experience, like, oh my God, we need to build this app. Think of this as an entire platform, because if you're paying that license fee, if you're paying Microsoft, however much you're paying for your P1 or your P2 license or your Dynamics license, those licenses become more valuable the more stuff you bring onto the platform, and the more stuff you can help your colleagues and your customers do with the platform. So think of it as a platform, not just as an app. It's not an app, it's a platform. Yeah, by the way, put SharePoint in its very rightful place. I'm usually used to talking to a group where half the group, they're all like sitting on one side of the room, they're all SharePoint people, and they hate me. It's awful, all right? But SharePoint is great for some things. So think about this, right? So think about this. How brilliant is the SharePoint community? And I really mean this, all right? How brilliant are longtime SharePoint people? They managed to get SharePoint to do something that it was never intended to do. They turned SharePoint into an app development platform. It's like trying to move furniture in a small car, right? Like, I don't know how we did it. We just strapped it to the roof, and we hoped for the best, and that's kind of what we did with SharePoint, right? Or not we. I hate SharePoint. Don't tell. But that's what we did with SharePoint, and you know what? Respect to those people. Respect to the brilliant people who made the most of SharePoint for 10 or 15 years. But now, Microsoft has said, hey guys, have PowerPlatform. This is the thing you always dreamt of when you were making SharePoint do these things that we never intended it to do, right? So put SharePoint in its rightful place. Use it for what it's meant for, documents, file sharing, portal content, collaboration. But use PowerPlatform for your relational data. Use it for your business intelligence and your visualizations. Use it to build these amazing apps. Don't use SharePoint. The age of the SharePoint app is over. Right? Yeah. All right. Number 3, CDS first. Who in your use of Power Apps, who is using CDS today, Common Data Service? All right, so we got a few people. It's magic. It's magic. If you haven't used CDS yet, I really recommend, if you do nothing else after today, go home, go to work on Monday, fire up an instance of CDS. If you don't know how to do that, any one of the speakers here can help you do that. Probably most of the people in this room, most of your colleagues and your friends in this room can help you do that as well. But plan to use the Common Data Service unless you have a really good reason not to. So every time you start developing an app, ask yourself, is there a reason not to use Common Data Service? Is there a reason to go back to SharePoint? If you tell yourself no, okay, use Common Data Service. SharePoint is not a data storage repository. That's not what we should be using SharePoint for. So model your data there. When I bring in and hire new developers and new platform specialists onto my staff, I tell them, they often ask, what's the number one skill that you wish more people had? What's the number one thing you wish more people could do on the platform? And I say the most important thing to know how to do on the platform is to model data. To model data in CDS. To think through at the beginning what you want that data model to look like, what you want those relationships to be, where you want to build logic into your data, okay? Model your data first. The rest of the app flows from what your data looks like. And I think that Chris is going to talk. Chris, is this leading into what you're doing at the end of the day? All right. So go to Chris's presentation, last one of the day, and he's going to talk more about this, right? So take advantage of CDS's ability to connect data across apps. So when I explain CDS to folks, and I should have done this earlier, what I talk about is the common source of truth, right? So that's what Common Data Service is it's one source of truth for all of our data. So a good way to describe this is, to think about this, is regions, countries, states, provinces, territories. So we've got all these places in the world, these geographic locations, and think how often you use those. Think how often in your data across all of your apps you reference the geographic location of a place. And then think about all of the different ways to describe that place in data, okay? Do we describe it in the native language of the place? Do we describe it in English? Do we describe it with an abbreviation? Is it the United Kingdom? Is it the UK? Is it España, Spain, Sverige, Sweden, USA, United States of America? I don't speak Ukrainian, so I can't, I don't know. But think about all the different ways to represent physical geographic place, all right? Now, for a long time, every time we would build an app, every time we would build a data model, we would have to re-represent that place. And oftentimes what would happen is it would get re-represented in a different way each time. So sometimes it would be the UK, sometimes it would be the United Kingdom, sometimes it would be USA, sometimes it would be United States. Well, now in Common Data Service, we can build that data model once, build that data set once, and then use it in every single app. We can make every geographic place available to every app. Think about what we can do with that across different use cases, different people, one customer, one employee. We can represent all of these things that we reference time and time again in our apps. We can represent it one time and share it amongst all of our apps. Look for out-of-the-box entities before you go custom, okay? So one of the things I see people do all the time is they get to the whiteboard, they're going to start modeling new data, and the first thing that they do is say, all right, well, we need a custom entity for this. Well, you might need a custom entity, but first consider, can we use something out of the box? You're going to save yourself a lot of time and a lot of headache. Microsoft's attitude now is, sure, create all the custom entities you want. If you think you can do it better than Microsoft, then yeah, make it custom. Do it, make it custom. But start with the out-of-the-box entity because you might save yourself a lot of work by using what's already out there. Leverage logic and validation in Common Data Service, all right? So some of you might get this, some of you might not, but I was giving a presentation a couple months ago, and there was a woman in the audience, and she said, well, I think Common Data Service is stupid. and everyone looked at her, and everyone was sort of satisfied to just let her say these things and move on with their lives. And she said, well, what I don't like about Common Data Service is that you can't write stored procedures in Common Data Service like you can in Dynamics on-prem. Actual thing this person said, right? Luckily, there were smart people in the audience to defend me and put her in her place. So I didn't have to say anything. I just said, anyone want to respond to that, right? So the point is that there's a lot of functionality inside of Common Data Service that we maybe haven't had access to in such an easy way. So don't overthink this, right? Use what's available in CDS, and I'm talking here the business rules, the process flows, the workflows. Code if you need, all right? Apply, write code if you have to, but go to those out-of-the-box tools and that out-of-the-box logic before you go to code. And then package your data model with your solutions, right? So who's using solutions today? Probably most people, right? Right? You're not like just customizing in the default environment and doing it right. All right. So what I'm not going to do because it's too early in the morning and Chris drank too much last night, I'm not going to start talking about managed versus unmanaged solutions. It sounds really fun, like it's something we should do sometime. But get a few drinks in me. But let's talk about solutions for a moment, all right? So if you don't know what solutions are, think of solutions as a container where you develop and you keep components of the solution. So there could be entities, attributes, fields, business logic, workflows, business process flows, whatever it might be. There's about 25 solution components, okay? Create a new solution. My rule of thumb is to create a new solution when to use solutions to segment like and similar pieces of functionality, all right? Different people have different thresholds for this. I see people deploy and use solutions in different ways. But the point is, segment that functionality by solution. So think of it this way. Let's go back to that custom travel app and to Airframe. Airframe, again, was just an app that I built that I like to reference. So in each of these solutions, we have all these things, right? Entities and attributes, forms and views, security roles, apps. We can now put our apps inside of our solutions, which is great. And other components. Like I said, there's about 25 of them. I think, what's the number? 27, 28, something between 25 and 30. And then we deploy these solutions onto the Common Data Service. So in a solution, it's the container, and we take all of these components with us, and we drop them onto the Common Data Service. And now, because of CDS, the components in those solutions are now available to the components in the other solutions. So solutions really that's the container that we use to move like functionality from one environment to another. All right. All right. Nail the basics. So Chris, you want to, what is this? 100% naming conventions. Yes. So one of the things that's really difficult for smart people, and everyone in this room, I am convinced, is brilliant, probably smarter than I am, but one of the things that I think is hard for smart people to do is to focus on basic things, right? Because we want to go on to the next thing. We want to go on to the next kind of brilliant, complex idea. But if you don't nail the basics, you're just setting yourself up for failure. So a few that we like are, do not use the default publisher, do not work in the default solution. Just gonna leave that there. Oh, develop and follow naming conventions. This is direct from @TattooedCRMGuy. If you're not following him on Twitter, follow him now. Get your phone out. Follow TattooedCRMGuy on Twitter. Right, so let's think about the different use cases between selling and between selling and recruiting. Let's think about how recruiting in an organization, like hiring new people, is different. So if we're building a recruiting app, maybe we want to process job applications, right? So if we create a custom entity called application, because we're just in our own little recruiting world, what do you think that does? Can the word application be used anywhere else? I can't imagine, right? Or lead. If we're building a recruiting app and we say, oh, we have a lead, we want to create an entity for a lead for this potential person we might hire, and we just create a custom entity called lead. What are we doing here? We're replicating something that means something else somewhere else on the platform. So again, we're talking just basic kind of naming conventions here. If I'm building a solution that has to do with recruiting, I call the thing what it is. I call it a recruiting lead. I call it a recruiting application. Think about your naming conventions up front, whatever they are. I'm not here to tell you what they should be. I'm here to tell you that you should have some, and they should make sense to you. No code does not mean no comment. Be kind to the developers that follow you. Leave a note. Write them a love letter. Write them a love letter. Tell them what you meant to do here. Tell them why you did it. All right? Don't assume that the person who comes next after you, you're not developing apps for yourself. You're developing apps for your customer. So help the developer that follows you serve that customer. Leave them a comment. Write them a love note. Tell them what you meant to do. Don't reinvent the wheel. So Manuela here suggests that we create reusable components and share them with your organization for a consistent look and feel. If you don't know Manuela Pichler, she runs PowerPlatform at Virgin Atlantic at the airline. And they build some really beautiful apps. She is also worth following. She is worth knowing. So a few ideas here as we think about how to not reinvent the wheel. Consider a base solution with all the components and data that your organization might repeatedly call on. So if there's things that you're doing in your organization time and time and time and time again, create a base solution. Stack all the components in there, make them available to the other people who are working within your organization. Create templates and styles that you and your developers can use to follow to have a consistent look and feel. Do not trust that everyone will have the same eye for style as you, okay? Create visual pieces and visual components that people can reuse. Look to the community, go back to number one, look to the community for answers to problems that have already been solved. All right, if you're having a problem and you're trying to figure something out on the platform, nearly guaranteed that someone else has had that same problem and someone else has tried to solve it. So don't necessarily think you have to solve all the problems. And then, like I said earlier, think of D365 as a catalog full of pre-built functions, things that you can go out and say, I'm going to grab that and I'm going to use that in my organization to save me some time so I can get on to developing something that no one's thought of yet. No code, low code first. Code creates technical debt that is difficult to maintain. Despite what the person who argued with Sarah and I on Twitter says, code creates technical debt that is difficult to maintain. So here's someone new to follow. If you're not following Sarah Lagerquist on Twitter, follow her now. I think it's Lagerquist Sarah, and I can spell that for you. Come see me, or see the guy in the back who's holding up his phone. Hold up. See that guy. He will get you set up following the no-code, low-code queen of Stockholm, and she's got good things to say. She's someone worth paying attention to. Seek first to achieve a piece of functionality using the out-of-the-box tools available. Don't just go to code. Say, can we solve this problem using the tools that are available in a no-code, low-code fashion? And if we really legitimately can't, write some code, if that's your thing. Next, go low-code. And then, as a last resort, extend the functionality with code where you have to.
With flow.
With flow! All right, remember these? Remember these? These are our apps. These are our power apps, right? Canvas app, model-driven app. Why does this matter? Well, a lot of times we don't do a very good job of thinking like users. We don't do a great job of thinking about what is going to make life easy for our users. So I think that one of the most powerful ways to deploy different Canvas and model-driven apps is to segment user experience. Thank you. I assume that means minutes, not seconds, right? 15 minutes? OK. All right. So model-driven apps, as you know, incorporate this robust functionality for manipulating large amounts of data or managing complex business processes, logic, that type of thing. I don't know if you've ever tried a model-driven app on your phone. You can do it. It's not the most fun thing out there. I say, generally, if we're catering to power users, I like to use a model-driven app. And then if we're catering to end users, I like to use a Canvas app. All right? So think about how you can narrow down and slim down functionality inside of a Canvas app to deliver a really focused, beautiful user experience, and then deploy the whole works to your power users via a model-driven app. I have a client right now who is very insistent that he only wants Canvas apps. So we're having to come up with really ingenious ways, I think, my team, of making Canvas apps do that which model apps were intended. But part of that's an education problem, right? So we need to help our customers and our colleagues understand that model-driven apps are for power users, Canvas apps are for end users. Microsoft has a great example, has a great kind of case study that they use. There's a company that I think what they do is they distribute soda. They distribute soft drinks. They put them up on trucks. They drive around. They deliver them to stores. Every morning there's 400 trucks sitting in the parking lot, right? And the drivers have to go out and find the truck full of the things that they're supposed to deliver and drive around and drive to their different routes and stores and everything and drop off the soda. Well, in the back office, the people who say, all right, we're going to put this on this truck and assign this truck to this driver and this route to this driver, they're using a model-driven app. And then the drivers get to go out in the parking lot in the morning and they pull out their phone and they say, oh, it's a Canvas app. And they say, oh, this is the truck that I'm going to go to. It's in parking space number 47, and this is the route that I'm going to drive today. So create focused experiences for end users using Canvas apps, and create robust, data-rich experiences for power users using model-driven apps. So kind of in the same thinking, segment your user experiences with apps. So remember in the old days of Dynamics, we built these enormous things, these enormous ERP or CRM systems using Dynamics. And that was the problem, right? Anyone who's been around who had the pleasure of working with Dynamics 2013 or CRM 2013, right? It was terrible. Oh, it was terrible. The menu, right? Imagine what that menu looked like at the time I was working on this app that really had 2,500 custom entities inside of it. Do you know what the ribbon looks like with 2,500 custom entities? It is literally the worst app experience I have ever had, and I built the thing. It was terrible. So, yeah, in the old days, we built these monolithic apps. Sometimes we could use security roles to narrow down and to slim down what people had access to and what people saw, but everyone knows it wasn't foolproof. It didn't always work quite the way we intended. But now what we can do is we can build separate apps that provide user experiences tailored to specific use cases. And because all of that data lives inside of CDS, the underlying data is the same, but we've built different apps to focus on different populations of users. So one of the problems I think we need to deal with, though, is how do we prevent app creep, right? How do we just say, oh, we're going to build an app for Auntie, and Chris does something sort of different, so we're going to build him his own app. Before you know it, you're supporting, you've got 100 people in the organization, you've got 97 different apps, because nobody can be pleased by the same thing. So I kind of think through these rules. So do the separate apps serve different user populations whose jobs are fundamentally different, right? So apps should serve people who are doing fundamentally different jobs. If they're doing really almost the same job, then build them the same app, okay? But if they're doing just totally different things, build them different apps. Make things simple for your users by minimizing their exposure to functionality that they won't use. So think, is this a piece of functionality? Is this a feature that the users that I intend this app to be for are going to use? If not, don't put that feature into the app. And then finally, prevent app creep by building single apps where there are commonalities amongst use cases. So if the use cases, if the jobs are similar, build them one app and have them use that. And then finally, number 10, Lee Baker, where are you? Thank you. Adopt enterprise management. So what I mean by this is that mature organizations are realizing, right, that if you don't adopt Power Platform with some discipline, with some rigor, if you don't think of it as a platform up front, if you just sort of say, hey, it's a free-for-all, get to Power Apps through the waffle, that thing, you click through the waffle up in O365 and build Power Apps. If you're not thinking about this deliberately, what you're going to do is you're going to replicate and recreate the SharePoint hell in Power Platform, all right? And that's what we want to avoid. So we're trying to adopt the platform at scale. So when I talk about adopting the platform at scale, and this is what I spend most of my time talking about these days, I think of really 5 buckets, 5 things that we need to think about. So in 10 minutes, I'm not going to get through all of enterprise management. But what I want to do is I want to get you thinking about 5 things that you should be keeping in mind as you help organizations adopt the platform at scale. So one is program management. How do we organize ourselves as an organization to effectively run, govern, manage, and spread the religion of PowerPlatform? So what I see more and more big organizations doing is establishing what, a lot of them call it a center of excellence. Virgin Atlantic calls it IT Light. But basically, you're establishing kind of a ninja cell within the organization, right? It could be in business, it could be in IT, but you're kind of putting together this core of experts on the platform, and it's their job to help the rest of the organization not just use Power Apps and use Power BI and build flows, but to help the organization do it in an orderly, productive fashion. So think about program management. Think about enterprise architecture. So how are we going to set up our tenants and our environments? This is important, right? How many people have seen in an organization where they say, yeah, we're just going to spin up an environment and let people use it, all right? Actually put some thought into that. So from a very simple perspective, how do we use just a simple kind of deployment pipeline, dev, test, prod, to regulate and to manage the solutions that we have out there, but also put some thought into where are your citizen developers going to be building apps, okay? So think through your enterprise architecture. What does your deployment pipeline look like? How do we authenticate users? Think that through ahead of time. Application lifecycle management. So how do we staff new development? What app is appropriate? What workload is appropriate for a citizen developer to build versus what do you need to have an expert come do? What are the best practices that we're going to use to build apps so that our app building is consistent across the organization? And finally, what does our configuration management look like? How do we, from an architectural perspective, from a data modeling perspective, make sure that we don't have 12 different ways of representing Ukraine inside of the common data service? There should be one. There is one Ukraine. There is one Spain. There is one Sweden. It is one data set. So think that through. How do you prevent every last person from creating their own data model and deploying it into your production environment? Next, mature the security model. Not just information assurance, not just IA, and sometimes different companies have different policies you need to follow, but also how are we going to use the security functionality built into CDS, all right, to control access to data and make our users, our business owners, a little more comfortable with what we're doing. And then finally, the thing that I think is most exciting, user support measures. So when I say user support measures, I'm not talking about the help desk. I'm talking about how do we onboard citizen developers? How do we make people in the organization part of the community? How do we nurture and train these folks? If you have someone who's an accountant who's now building their own apps, all right, how do we help them develop? How do we help them grow as a citizen developer? How do we make them part of the team? How do we make them part of our user group? How do we teach people? How do we mentor and coach and guide people? So that's what I mean by user support measures. It's not just help desk. It's way more than help desk. It's about building community around Power Platform inside of your organization, inside of your city, inside of whatever it is, okay? How do we build that community? So if you're just getting started with enterprise management, understand what's already in place. All right, I ripped this slide off from someone. I forget who it was. It was either Lee or Manuel or maybe Keith, I don't know. But understand what's already in place. So go out, determine what's out there today. People have probably already found Power Apps, are probably already building Power Apps, but figure out what's already there. Then plan your environments, plan your policies, plan how you're going to regulate and govern this in your organization, and then provide training, roadshows, show and tell sessions. Hit the road, get out there, get out into the business. Help people use this thing. Use the tools that are built into Power Platform to gain insights and to monitor, and then finally look how you can use automation to improve the process. So when I talk about automation to improve the process, I think, how can we say use Flow to automate, if you've got citizen developers out there, how do we say when someone spins up a new app, how do we use Flow to say create a list of tasks in their Outlook to say, hey, we see you've built a new app. Here are the 5 things we need you to do before we can deploy it to production. And then finally, building the community. So we've got our architect there, and we've got someone out in the business who wants to be who's a subject matter expert in that business. Establish relationships with these people. This is not an organizational chart. This is about mentoring and coaching and bringing people into the fold. Now we've got citizen developers, and everyone inside of the organization should be able to reach back to someone who really knows their stuff on the platform, reach back to an architect to help mentor them and to bring them along. Don't expect that your citizen developers are going to be as talented or as knowledgeable as you are. You need to share your knowledge with them and help them build better apps. So let's just go through what it looks like to put an app out there. So we've got our person who raises their hand and says, I want to be an app maker. Well, great. Let's get them into citizen developer onboarding. Yay, citizen developer onboarding. App in a day. We're teaching them how to build apps. Make sure you talk with their manager, all right? Don't just go steal people from inside the business. But maybe you also have a business leader who they don't know that they need to build an app. They don't know how to build an app, but they really just must solve a problem, all right? Well, the first thing you want to do is identify if PowerPlatform is a viable solution. Is this the correct technology to be using to solve this problem? If you determine that Power Apps, Power BI, Flow, that this is the correct technology to use to solve the problem, now you can make one of a couple decisions. Maybe there's a citizen developer out there who can build this thing for you, but maybe it's just too complicated a workload for that citizen developer, and that's okay too. So we've set ourselves up for three possibilities. Either we're going to have a new citizen developer build the app, in which case you need to stick with them and help them through this first app building experience. Maybe we're going to have an existing citizen developer build the app. They might not need quite as much attention, but they still need to be mentored and coached and brought along. Or maybe you're going to build the app yourself. Okay, maybe you're the expert, you're going to build the app, or you're going to hire someone to build the app. But at the end of the day, what we're really doing is we're going to transition this thing to IT, right? We're going to transition the app into its long-term home. I'm not here to tell you who should own the app next year. I'm just telling you that you need to plan ahead so that someone owns the app next year, so that at 3 in the morning, 3 a.m., you don't have someone calling you up in a panic because their app doesn't work. They need to have a place to go to get help. Someone's got to own that app. Think that through ahead of time. Plan for that. All right, top 10 best practices. Don't be scared, embrace the community. Embrace the platform too. CDS first, CDS first. Remember that. Be part of the solution. Use solutions to organize your deployments. Nail the basics. Do not neglect those basic rules. Don't reinvent the wheel. Look for something else that's already doing the job. Go no code, low code first. We don't want to create technical debt for ourselves. Use model-driven apps for power users, Canvas apps for end users, segment your user experience with apps, and adopt enterprise management. And finally, please, please, please share your best practices with me at Andrew D. Welch, W-E-L-C-H. My name is spelled wrong in the program, at Andrew D. Welch. Share your best practices with me. I want to share them with the rest of the community. I'd love to hear them. So I look forward to talking with all of you. If you have any questions, I think we have 2 minutes left maybe, I don't know, but I'll be around all day, so come find me, and I'm happy to answer questions. Thanks, everybody.
Smart. Less stress. Joy of success.